How can God claim to be moral when he kills innocent people in the Old Testament? I mean, God tells us do not murder, and he murders. God tells us to be morally upstanding individuals and judges us whenever we do it. But then we look in the Old Testament and, he's killing entire nations, and he's telling the nation of Israel to go in and kill babies and pregnant women and, seemingly, innocent people. And then even if the nation as a whole was guilty, can we really say that every single person in that, I mean, like babies haven't done anything wrong. I mean, every single person in that nation is evil and deserves to die just because maybe there were some evil people that did some things. And so, I mean, it seemed like God is kind of contradicting himself.
Yeah, great question. And again, when an atheist asks me this question on a college campus, the question I'm always going to ask back is, by what standard are you judging God to be wrong? Because again, if there's no God, it's just your personal opinion. You might not like what goes on in the Old Testament, but it's not objective. It's just in you, the subject. Unless there's a standard beyond us, everything's just a matter of opinion. But secondly, I would ask the question, can God murder anyone? In other words, when God kills somebody, if he exists and he created us, when he kills somebody, is that murder? And the answer is no. Why? Because God is the creator of life and he's the only one that can resurrect it. Look, if Christianity is true, and it is, then when people die, they don't really die. They just change location. They go from this life into the next life. And it's up to God when that happens. Right? God can take us out at 82 or 2. It's up to him because he's the creator of life and he's the sustainer of life and he's the only one that can resurrect life. So what might be immoral for us because we're not God is not immoral for God. In fact, God kills, if God exists, God, and he sustains all life, he kills all of us at some point, right? I mean, right. He pulls his hand away from us. Is that murder for him? No. It's just the natural transition that we all take from this life to the next life. Now, the questions about the Canaanite killings in the Old Testament. The other question we need to ask is, when God decided that the Canaanites needed to be driven from the land, was that arbitrary or did he have reasons for that? Well, if you read the text, he had reasons, right? There were 400 years of iniquity from the Canaanites that was not complete until that time. And the Canaanites were not only involved in all sorts of evil sexual practices, they were also involved in literally sacrificing their children to Molech, the molten or the metal god that was like had a bull head and a human body and it had arms, and they would heat this metal god up and they would essentially put their children on the arms of this god, Alan, and watch their children sizzle to death. And it's not just in the Bible that says this. Plutarch, a Greek writer from about the 1st century, said the drummers in the town would pound their drums more loudly so the parents couldn't hear the screams of their own children. Now, this was going on to the point that even Solomon got involved with this, that Solomon and some of the kings of Israel began sacrificing their children to Molech. You can read Leviticus 18. It's in there. Now, on every college campus I go to, Alan, I hear an atheist get up and say, well, if there is a good God, why doesn't he stop all the evil in the world? Well, here's a case in the Old Testament where God sees the evil and he says, I'm going to stop it. And now the atheists are complaining. He's stopping it. Well, wait a minute. Do you want him to stop it or not? Okay. But then they're going to say, well, look, he may have gone too far. He started killing the children, as you mentioned. Now, there are two views on this, and I know this answer is going on a long time. It's a complicated issue.
This is good.
Okay, there's two answers, or there's two ways of looking at the text. One way is the way that Paul Copan looks at it. I don't know if you can see this book. This is a book called Is God a Moral Monster? Making Sense of the Old Testament God. Paul Copan is the author, a brilliant guy who teaches down at Palm Beach Atlantic. And what Copan has noticed in the text, Alan, is that if you go to, say, Deuteronomy 7, it'll say something like this. Okay, Israel, wipe all these evil people out. Kill them all. And then the next verse, it'll say, and then don't intermarry with them. And you're going, wait a minute. Wait, look, If you're going to wipe everybody out, why would you then have the warning to not intermarry with them? None of them would exist after you wipe everybody out, right? Well, it turns out that Copan has discovered that in the ancient Near East, they had this exaggerated language to try and show that if you wanted to have a decisive victory, they would use language like annihilate. Nothing lives. Let no breathing thing stay alive. I mean, just completely destroy these people. But it didn't mean to completely wipe them out. It meant to have a decisive victory and drive them out of the land. It would be like, we use this kind of a language in sports. The Giants annihilated the Cowboys, right? Or something like that, or vice versa, right? We don't really mean the Cowboys no longer exist. It's just a way of speaking. So that's the argument Copan makes. The argument that Clay Jones from Biola makes, he says, no, these were literal commands. But it was not genocide, it was judgment. And God had the right to take people out anytime he wants based on the evil they've done. And he says, what were the Israelites supposed to do with the children? If they tried to bring the children up, the children are going to grow up going, hey, you killed my parents, now I'm going to kill you. Or they're going to try and go back to their old practices, which were all of these evil things they were doing. So that's the argument that Clay Jones makes. The bottom line to the whole thing, though, is this. God has the right to move people into the next life whenever he wants. And it's not immoral for God to do that because he's the creator and sustainer of all things.